write what you know, write what you love. And what I mean by that is you need to start out your writing journey by writing experiences that you know well, that you've lived, because that's going to be the easiest thing for you to get into and then start to kind of find your voice. And then over time, you transition into the write what you love. It's like, okay, what do I love to read? What do I love to consume media wise? And how can I start to kind of write stories in that? It's just that simple phrase: write what you know, write what you love.
This is the CritRPG podcast, your one-stop shop for everything lit RPG, progression fantasy, and Royal Road. Hi, and welcome to the CritRPG podcast, the only podcast that asks itself, Que Seras, Seras. With me today is SerasStreams. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you.
Wonderful. And you are writing several books right now, one of them being Ruinous Return, and the other one not being Dark Matter Ascension. No, actually, it is Dark Matter Ascension, right?
Yes.
Good, because we're talking before the YouTube show started on the Patreon. We talked about Dark Matter Dimensions, which is a death metal album by Star
Right.
Symmetry. So, yeah.
Right. So I am working on Ruinous Return. The poll for the direction that book 3 is taking ends tomorrow, because I really want to try to have a satisfying conclusion for the fans and the patrons that have been supporting the story. And then Dark Matter Ascension is my current release that's getting daily drops, and I've written the first 2 books and already sent them off to editors mid like 10k chapter or 10k words into book 3. And I do have a third project that is currently Patreon exclusive, and the plan is to get the entire book finished and then kind of use my Patreon as beta readers of sorts. And that's called Last Lord of the Fae.
All right. I mean, like, having patrons and using them as beta readers sounds like a good idea. I wish I could do that. No, I just don't do Patreon for my books. But so tell me a little bit about your book. So Ruinous Return is about a guy who invests a lot of money and doesn't get much back.
Oh, that would be an interesting spin on the isekai genre. So, Ruinous Return is my take on another author's sort of idea. So there's a great author who I consider kind of my mentor, my first mentor, in this entire space, Neon Dreams, and you interviewed him a couple of months ago, I think. And
yeah. Where's he gone?
So I have kept in touch with him. Just real life stuff, other real world things have kind of taken him away from writing. He's in a good place though. So,
okay, good.
Yeah. Nothing bad's happening. But you're right.
I
He
was
has kind of
really
fallen
worried.
off the radar. Right.
Yeah.
So Second Summons is kind of like a dark fantasy isekai that he wrote, and I said, I like this story, but he doesn't go deep enough into trauma, I think. And we talked about we talked about this a little bit on the Patreon thing. I like researching quite a bit, and I don't just research on the internet. I also will like go and interview people. So when I was getting the ideas together for Ruinous Return, which is a dark fantasy sort of returny isekai story, I actually went and interviewed like people in elder care homes about PTSD, like war survivors, and they're wonderful people who they love sharing their life stories, especially with people who are like kind of curious about their lives. And Ruinous Return is really the culmination of me doing a whole bunch of study onto various different types of trauma and saying, how would people who were damaged, sucked in via isekai, and then having to deal with the aftermath of beating the big bad evil guy, how would that leave them? And how would they process? And it's done through the lens of multiple character POV swaps. Lynn Rivers is the main character, and she has a very interesting arc because she dies at the start of the story. Like, I'm not spoiling much there. In chapter 1, in the first part, she dies because she gets the killing blow on the bad guy, and then this is in the blurb as well. She gets tossed back to Earth, and forces her way back, but someone's taken the credit for the kill. So there's this element of wanting to reclaim stolen valor, and the title has multiple meanings. The story, I think, is one of the kind of deeper webs of character interplay the more you go into it, because there's a cast of over 72 named characters with varying traits that all interconnect in a huge conspiracy map that I wrote and is hanging on my wall right now. So
Okay. So yeah. Spoilers, she dies in the first chapter, and then the rest are just blank pages all the way to the end.
Oh yeah. Just disregard the 400,000 words or so that I've written, and just it's all bait. It's all bait. It's gonna be a great print release. Yep.
It's like invisible ink. It's like the
Yeah.
story's all there. You just have to find it. Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah. And that book was picked up by Mango Media back in August, September. I'm starting to get the audiobook tracks from the voice actress that they got. Phenomenal lady.
Who'd you get?
I'm pulling up her name right now because I saved it. Come on, where are you? I believe it is Hannah Trusty. And she's nailing the characters so perfectly. One of the villains, you hear the voice and you hate her, and it's so good. So that hopefully will be seeing an Amazon Kindle and ebook release and Audible. I'm thinking February or March based on just kind of how things are progressing, but it could be later. I'm not sure.
Cool. Yeah, Selk is doing a good job. I like it a lot.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's good to have like more publishers in the space, because like Podium and Ethan were like really getting overworked, and Selk is like starting to like really carve out a niche there. I like it.
Right, and that was when I was shopping around to various publishers. I spoke with Rhett from Aethon, and one of the things he said was, "Look, the story is interesting. If you get another offer and you're looking to publish anytime soon, we've got a huge backlog we're still working through. Like, I think he said it was something like a year turnaround.
Yeah.
Something around there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's like you said, there needs to be more. And I know there's a whole bunch of cool publishers out there now. You got Shadow Alley Press that does some good stuff. Portal Books, very selective of their clients, but phenomenal books they produce.
They all have like the different things. So
yeah, the little niches.
Yeah, some of them interestingly almost act as agents, which means like obviously like Drew and I were not doing like much business with them, but there are definitely some that like are. Yeah, every single publisher has like the different like niche. So like Portal, I like a lot because Brooks is like a really swell guy. Also caveat, he funded this podcast at some point.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he did. Like at the very start, gave me like this microphone, for example.
Oh, that's cool.
But
it sounds nice, very crisp.
It's
Unlike my $40 crappy Maono mic.
Oh no, yours works totally. I also have like a Focusrite amplifier and everything. Like it's a setup. But like they're super selective because they only have like 3 editors, and I always joke that you don't publish with Portal. You pay your dev editor 50% of your income because they're that good.
Yeah.
Right. Or like I don't know how many percent they take. I'm not gonna say, but it's not 50. It might be more,
right. I'd imagine it's some amount, but I've heard that like they're one of the few in the space in this kind of like progression fantasy, lit RPG, isekai space that does dev edits on a lot of their releases.
It is just quite phenomenal. I mean, like, we are Rhaegar's agents, and he like he will say himself like working with Brooke has completely changed his writing. And they're really great friends now. Talk every day. So definitely think that with Portal you can totally go super. You can't go wrong with Portal if you can get in. Aethon, of course, like huge powerhouse, like amazing marketing. And if they really believe in your story, like they will
Yeah,
try to get as many people published as they can. But if they really take a liking to your story, like you're gonna go to the moon. Period.
right. And also they'll like
Mhm.
shove you up in the queue faster than
Yeah, yeah.
something that they think might not, do as well in the short term.
Yeah, and that sounds like a bad thing, but it really isn't, because like Rhett and Steve have like a very deep insight into the industry, and they know when what is coming out, so they kind of like position things in a certain way, right? So definitely there. Then like Legion, I think they have like a huge social media presence, which I really enjoy, and they have like a really good handle on social media. You often see people of them, like people of theirs, posting on Facebook, and yeah, like definitely also more of an agent though. So they're kind of like mixing the two of them, and yeah, a bunch of others. Like, can really recommend all of them. I think Podium is like the one that it comes like the closest to trad that we have. But they've also been stepping things up with like the Two Rivers distribution. Like, yeah, sorry, huge tangent, but it is definitely worth keeping a look at these like publishers. And yeah, I'm working
Right.
on a little something to make it more easy accessible.
Right. And then also just kind of put a button on a nice little bow on this
Mm.
portion. I definitely think that it's really good for any aspiring authors who start to get a following to try to apply to more than just a-thon,
Oh
or
yeah,
just Podium. It's like there's so
yeah,
many up and coming smaller publishing houses that are starting to break into the space, like you said, with their various strengths.
yeah,
Like for me, I suck at social media, so having somebody who can guide me and counsel me on that is huge.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, like social media is like very important. The whole, if you can build like some sort of like parasocial relationship with your followers, it is tremendously important.
Oh yeah.
um yeah, like I mean, just there's a reason why Brandon Sanderson is so popular. And yes, his books are completely stellar. He's a maximist. I love that.
Hmm.
But also he literally spent 33% of each year flying to every con that he could and shaking hands, kissing babies, up to the
Yeah.
point where he like literally collapsed on a floor somewhere.
That's crazy. I didn't know he collapsed from
Mm.
exhaustion from traveling. But yeah, it just shows what the power of having kind of a personality behind you, and not necessarily like, you know, um like an aggressive or anything personality, but just being that kind of open and wanting to talk to fans. And
Mm.
as you and I kind of got into earlier in the Patreon exclusive portion of the show, right?
Mm.
We got onto a nice tangent about history. So
Mm.
that just shows the power of when you have multiple nerds that meet each other. Like I'm sure Sanderson loved talking to all of those fans
Mm.
because they were super fantasy nerds just like him.
Mm. Oh yeah, totally. And like I don't think I ever want to be as famous as Sanderson.
Yeah, it
um
seems like a hassle.
yeah, but I mean, on the other hand, he literally is just buying like a huge plot of land next to his favorite amusement park, which is like on the other side of his road. He has an underground evil lair, which is great. Um, and a very good shower in the Elantris house. He has a house for each of his books. A
That's crazy.
room or house, but it's really cool. Like his guest house has a room for each of his series. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
That's some nice money to make eventually. But I mean, at the same time, that level of fame also comes with a bunch of luggage as well.
Oh yeah. Like I always recount a story. I'm gonna make it quick this time. Um, a college professor of one of my friends once escorted President Ford across campus, and President Ford like made a gesture, and like secret service agents came up to the professor and said like, "Hey, can you please show us the next 3 or 4 bathrooms because we have to secure all of them?" And the professor in that moment was like, "Okay, I never want to be so famous that people have to secure my bathrooms before I can go anywhere." like that is just a hassle. But yeah,
Absolutely. Hopefully Sanderson doesn't have to deal with that level of threats, but I'd imagine
no.
he probably goes most places with a couple security now,
Um,
just in case.
yeah. I mean, like, he has like a really big fan, big family, and like there isn't really much to hate about the guy.
Right.
So it's different. Like Pirate, for example, Pirate Abba, another of
Mhm.
our another of our clients. um, no, like they are so anonymous and like public invisible because they are. There was a story about a content creator at a con who just like shot or stabbed by a
What? That's
fan.
crazy.
Yeah, and so they were like, "No, man, I'm not doing that. Like, I am not doing that." So yeah,
That's
one of
why
the
I've got
biggest
to.
authors we have, but completely anonymous.
Yeah, I mean that's why I've got a VTuber avatar. Is
Mm.
I don't want people to meet me in person. I'm very introverted.
Yeah, Honor Ray as well, right? So
Oh, Ray, yes, God
yeah,
love her, great person.
she's great. Yeah, she said, yeah, she also still wants to go to cons, right, without everyone knowing who she is. I
Right.
completely respect that. Right, it's very important. So yeah, but that's another tangent. Tell me about Dark Matter Ascension, please.
Yeah. So, I do eventually want to work towards making sort of more of my income based off of writing. First off, I write because I love writing, I enjoy it, but I do see the potential for getting a series off the ground that is very much to market. So,
Mm-hmm.
Dark Matter Ascension is my take on a to market story um, that blends a lot of stuff that I like. So, first off, space stuff. The story is not hard sci-fi; it's very soft sci-fi, but I love different space research items. So, researching pulsars, quasars, nebula, black holes, dark matter itself, which we still know very little about. There's stuff that we conjecture, but not a lot that we know for sure. So blending that with fantasy seemed like a natural thing to my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And the main plot of the story is it's sort of like a system integration, system apocalypse style of start.
Mm-hmm.
Every world, when it hits a certain population threshold, goes through something called cosmogenic merging. And if you don't know the definition of cosmogenesis because it is a weird word. It
Which
is
is
when a
also,
universe is created.
by the way, another name of a Scar Symmetry song.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me if they're
Yeah.
space inspired, but yeah. So every world goes through cosmogenic merging when they hit a population threshold, and people who are interested in becoming an aspirant and possibly gaining godlike powers can choose to take a trial.
I always hear the word aspirant, and my head goes like, if they if they want to become super sweaty.
Um,
Come on,
yeah, I
it's right
got the
there.
joke. I got the
It's right
joke.
there.
I got the joke. I'm trying to see past the joke because I don't want to have to go back and change the whole plot now that you've made the joke.
Do you? Sorry. Do you an aspirin?
Yes, yeah, no. I know what an aspirant is for combating. Yeah, I got the joke.
I know. I mean, I did
Again, I'm
too.
trying to ignore the joke.
I'm not letting you.
So, um, anyways, so the main character is this guy named Jace, Jace Saren, and he's present on Earth during the cosmogenic merging, and he chooses aspirant because it gives him the chance to possibly bring his sister back. His sister, who I don't want to spoil the story, but something happened to her that makes her unavailable to him as a family member. So I mean,
Okay.
I know I'm being very vague, but it's because I don't want to spoil it. It happens early on in like chapter 7, but I still don't want to spoil it because
Yeah.
it's a fun twist.
And the way you phrased that made me really happy. You ended it on family member.
So Right. So he gets a cute little river otter companion named Oliver, or
Mhm,
Ollie to his friends, and basically the entire series is his journey of working his way up from tier 1, which is just a way to categorize levels of power, tier
mhm,
1 through tier 10, so that he can do what he needs to get his sister back.
mhm.
Um,
Okay.
and there's a deeper underlying plot thread. And like I said, I love studying stuff. I really studied psychology and manipulative personalities for this. So there's a character that gets introduced early on
Mhm,
that sort of guides Jace. And at the
mhm,
same time, there's other threads they're pulling, almost like a mastermind. And you kind of get to see little glimpses of their point of view,
mhm,
kind of puppeteering everything around the main character. And there's a bit of a commentary on a sub theme there that some people may try their best to do something, but the circumstances that they're involved in are ultimately out of their control and being
mhm,
manipulated by outside forces. So I don't ever want to,
mhm,
like Dark Matter Ascension, it's to market, but I didn't want to just write a simple system apocalypse, character kill
mhm.
stuff, gets stronger, kill stuff, gets more level ups. That's boring to me.
Numbers must go up.
The numbers do kind of go up. There's not like stats. It's a statless system because I learned my lesson doing that with Versewalker, which was a failed
Yeah.
project. You remember the images that I generated and shared on Discord, right? From Finite Void's thing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see the eyebrow wiggle. Yeah. Um, let's just say I learned my lesson. No number stat systems for me ever going forward.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm still like um I'm still actually going. So for some reason I thought it would be a great idea to have the current like experience total in each um like chapter title
Mhm.
for Torchbearer or Apotheosis. And I often found myself, no, wait. How many did she get? How many did she spend? Oh my
Right.
god!
And the
So I got
tracking
you.
is
Mm,
so horrible. Like the spreadsheet is so many cells large, so many
mm,
pages long, and I said
mm,
never again am I going to do something with this level of tracking. And then Dark Matter Ascension, I'm into book 3, and thankfully I'm only at 12 spreadsheets instead of Versewalker's like 48. And the system
Jesus.
document the system document is around 28 pages, but I'm also using it as a glossary where as I create names for stuff, I add it in and I use it as a reference. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely love world building, and Dark Matter Ascension is fun for world building because
Mm,
any worlds that I want to use, if I want to do a magic world,
mm.
boom, I've got one. I made one named after another author, Nahilia, who writes Sordid Affair.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the world is a mouthful to pronounce, and I actually make a joke of it later on in the story that it's hard to pronounce. It's Nihilethelia, which is a mouthful to say. Um, but I was able to flesh out this world and then have the main character stay there
Mm.
for a while, and then it's like, okay, I'm kind of getting tired of fantasy. Let's start to shift transition to like cyberpunk magitech or sci-fi.
Cool. Yeah, the
Yeah,
whole multiverse thing. Yeah,
well,
that's
it's
dope.
not a
Yeah,
it's
I know what you mean. I know what
it's
like.
not a
I'm sorry. I'm
multiverse.
sorry. I'm
No, it's
sorry. I'm so
okay.
sorry.
It's not a multiverse. Yeah, it's definitely not a multiverse. There are multiple
Mm.
universes, but I've got a grander scale. I
Okay.
got plans. Like I said,
Oh
a
no. Oh
huge
no.
document.
Oh no. Okay. So for names for places, I personally love the way that they did it in Dragon Age. You know what the world is called in Dragon Age?
Oh, I don't remember the name of the world, but I remember like the map and I remember some of the location names.
Tedas or Tidas. Tedas. You know what Tidas means?
Is it pronounced Tidus or is it
Yep.
Thedus?
Thedas, yeah. Sorry, Thedas,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. You were saying
Yeah.
Tidus, and I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Do they say it that way in the game?
I think
Okay.
they said
Yes,
Thedas.
yes, I'm familiar with the game world.
Yeah.
Origins was my crack as a child or teenager.
I'm gonna shatter everything you know. It
Oh
stands
no.
for the Dragon Age setting.
No, I can see it now. Oh, that's horrible.
Yep.
That's so
Yep.
horrible.
Yep. Which
Oh,
is why the world in Torchbearer is called Tobes. Torchbearer setting.
mm,
Yep.
that's oh my god. That's I I don't know what to think now. My brain is my brain's fried. Good god, how did I never notice that?
Yep.
Jeez, I was blinded by sheer passion for the fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, it's good. Like Thetis is a great name for a world.
Yeah,
It works.
absolutely. But now that you
Like
pointed that out,
just
I
like
can't
Earth.
not see it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Oh my god. Note to self. Use that naming convention in the next one.
Note to self: question everything. Yeah,
Yes.
it's definitely fun. Like, okay, but you have like, I want to talk more about your grander scale, but I feel as though we're going into like spoiler territory, so probably we
We,
shouldn't.
we we would be getting into book 2 spoilers, which my patrons are currently at book 2 chapter 52 because I've got a backlog of like 70 chapters for patrons.
I want to write so bad. Like I haven't written in like I have written like 2 chapters in the last 3 months. So I am 100% losing my mind. I had a huge backlog and I still
Right.
have backlog to go, but still like
Yeah,
I
I'm
want to
feeling
go
the
get it done.
stress. I feel the stress and I
Yeah.
understand because like right now I got about 30 chapters of backlog for patrons on Dark Matter Ascension,
Mhm.
but that means it's going to be out. I'm going to be out of chapters when I get to January, mid-January.
Mhm.
So I basically every single day, even after work, I will sit down and write a minimum of 1 chapter of Dark Matter Ascension, 2,000 words, so I can maintain my backlog's pace
Oh,
ahead.
okay. Yeah, my chapters like I've stopped doing chapters that are 2,000 words, because like what they mean is that I basically just have like one gigantic string of consciousness over many chapters. Like I just can't write like that. So
Mhm.
what I do instead now is I plot the chapter and then I write the chapter. And if the chapter is 6,700 words long, then I'm gonna post that. But it also
No,
means that
you're
I
going
can only
rodent method.
post what? What?
You're going the rodent method, the stubborn
Yeah,
skill grinder in a time
yeah,
loop.
yeah. I just write until it's done, and that means I can only publish once a week. Like
No, I get that.
because yeah,
Yeah,
I
doing
got too much shit
8,000
to
words
do.
a day is nuts. Like that's me on a good weekend day, like a good Saturday
Mm.
is 8,000 to 10,000 words. On a weekday, I don't know how you do it.
I so who did I talk to? Oh yeah, MG Driver. And he said
Oh
something that was
yeah, driver.
yeah very controversial yet so brave. And
Mhm.
there was the better he gets at writing, the lower his word count gets.
Right. There is something to be said for being able to deliver a concise story in a smaller package that is more kind of punchy, for lack of a better word.
All I've ever learned in like in all my writing classes was like, hey, how can you say the most with the least amount of words possible?
Hmm.
And that is completely missing in this genre. Like it is absent. Like there's some people who do it. Like for example, Matt Dinneman. He is really good, like really good.
Hmm.
But he also writes each chapter 20 times.
Oh, really? I did
Yeah,
not know that.
he writes
That's
each chapter
insane.
20 times and then picks the best one.
I couldn't bring myself to do that. No way. I when I write a chapter, I proofread it once or twice to make sure that I like it and that there's no glaring spell or grammar errors, anything like that, and then it just
Hmm.
gets added to the backlog.
I couldn't ever do that. Like because A, I forget what I wrote, and B, um, I am so intentional with how and where I put my words, and so there's like I got two sorts of feedbacks from people. So people who are slow readers really like my stuff. People who are fast readers hate it because they have no idea what the fuck is going on. Because I communicate much of my meaning not through the plot beats, but through the subtext with the prose,
Right.
right? So, for example, I will use more somber words, or I will try to like shorten the meter or like lengthen the meter and kind of like deviate into like longer sentences when there's something really passionate happening, and that you can only get those things if you actually read all the words. If you just skim it,
And there's a
yeah,
lot that do the skim style read to devour as much as they can. It almost
yeah,
sounds like you're delving into that Paradise Lost territory by Milton,
yeah,
where you've got such a good compelling story on the surface, but then if you start to dig into the subtext underneath the way characters are saying things and what they're saying as they say it, and the
yeah.
narration, that there's these deeper layers that you don't get on, like you said, a skim read or the traditional kind of, I just want to consume this as fast as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, let me be real here. I am not Milton. I am not going to win any Pulitzer prizes anytime soon. But even though my surface action, especially in like Torchbearer 1, is very long winded and takes a shit ton of time, I think the subtext is good. I think the subtext is like very good. It's just like, and here's my warning to everyone who wants to write this way: this may not be the genre that you want to do that in. And also, you have to have this. You have to have the front facing story to be as compelling as you can, and then add the subtext. So yeah, like it's a learning experience. I'm gonna
Absolutely.
rewrite it in 2026.
And going back to the whole like word count thing for chapters just a moment, I completely get that too, where you want to tell something and you don't want the chapter to end till it's done being told. For the last arc of Ruinous Return, the war arc, which
Mm-hmm.
was 100,000 words, it's 10,000 to 11,000 word chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Just each of those was an enormous section of this worldwide conflict spanning over the course of a couple of weeks. And I wouldn't feel right, like you said, doing like 2,000 word 2,000 word chapters. You need that higher word count to tell the story you want to tell, especially if you're doing specific scenes within a larger overall scene.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe I was also a little bit too influenced by Brandon over here. He's also maximalist.
Oh,
Shit, I haven't.
Brandon.
Oh,
Brandon.
Brandon.
I'm sorry. I love him, and I'm gonna probably get some flack for this. I do not like Mistborn. I am not a fan of Mistborn. I
Thanks,
like
everyone.
some
This
of
has
his
been the
other
CritRPG
work.
podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Like I enjoy Stormlight. I enjoyed Stormlight Archives. Like I really enjoyed Stormlight Archives, but I just couldn't get into Mistborn. I tried, and it just didn't catch me.
Okay, I have one problem.
Yeah.
I bought these versions here
Uh huh.
of the Stormlight Archive, and now Amazon doesn't sell me the next one in the series in this cover art.
Oh, they changed it. Oh, that's
I am so
horrible.
upset.
Time to send off an angry email to Amazon demanding the cover art that you're used to.
Yeah, well, like maybe I can find it. Oh wow! Well, by the way, book has been out for like what, like 5 days or whatever. Yeah, like 10 days. Guess how many ratings he has?
I'm gonna guess 12,000.
No, 1,300.
Oh, okay.
Which is like blows everything out the water. Like in 5 days, he gets as many ratings as like almost as many ratings as like, I don't know, Stargazer's War. Like it's,
Right.
which is by the way a really really good book. I've read it recently, and you should really read that. God
It
damn it!
sounds like an interesting book. I have to look it up. Stargazer's War. I'm adding that to my reading list because it sounds sci-fi, and I do enjoy my sci-fi. Um, Especially when it contains fantasy elements. Like, one of the things that originally drew me to that idea was Star Wars, because that's basically just fantasy science fiction,
Yeah,
complete
it's
with
science
magic.
fantasy.
Yeah, so that was actually one of the inspirations for Dark Matter Ascension. Is I want this to be science fantasy, soft sci-fi, fantasy lean, and include cybernetics and like mega corporation fueled Earth. Yeah, all different types of fun kind of futuristic genre types blended with fantasy. Because there's so much medieval fantasy out there, and there's not a lot of more kind of alternate fantasy scenarios. One great series, Finite Voids, Shades of Perception,
Oh yeah,
uh, and like that, Gaslamp fantasy is something that you don't really see a ton of.
I I really don't know why he chose the title though. Wouldn't it have been like way easier to just write prescription shot sunglasses?
It could absolutely have been something like that. But yeah, we see way too many fantasy books set in medieval settings,
Yeah,
especially in this kind of progression fantasy lit RPG isekai space. It's just
yeah.
very common. So I think there's a lot of potential for looking at other eras of
Mm,
world history and taking inspiration. Recently, that Hohenfels story popped onto Rising Stars All, and it was like
mm.
Magic Academy set in the Holy Roman Empire
Yeah.
inspired type setting. And that was a breath of fresh air in the genre.
Nova Roma,
Yes.
right?
I've
Also really good. But like or like Virtuous Sons. Or of course, like we cannot forget this. Godclads.
yes.
Because
There's so many good
Godclads
ones out there.
is like it's out there. But okay, so like so I also wanted to write something like that, right? So with Torchbearer. But because I got completely derailed, I again my pantsing problem. I have since changed my ways because I
I'm
got
still a
completely derailed.
pantser, so I understand.
We never really got to the point where I can explore the world outside of the virtual realities stuff. Like now in book 2, we're kind of getting there ish. But I definitely have like way more to explore there and have to like do way more about it. But I thought the idea of this fantasy world that had gone through a technical, logical, like very sudden technological upheaval,
Mhm.
brought about by like a near cataclysmic event. That sounds fun. That's cool. Like, what
Yeah.
happens to medieval society if suddenly they can like find assault rifles lying around?
Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios and kind of what ifs you could play out with that that would be very engaging to read into. But at the same time, you're also coming up against one of the kind of almost flaws I'm seeing a bit in the genre, that there's quite a few readers that don't seem to like that multiple perspective type of storytelling, and
Oh
you
yeah. Mhm.
can't really tell those interesting side stories, those interesting little, side bits about the world to really flesh it out without dipping into some other perspectives, which can lose you
Mhm.
readers and lose interest overall.
I mean, so there was recently a Reddit post about this, and I think it may be also a good segue into the next question. But let's go for that real quick.
Yeah.
So I think if you want to do multiple point of view characters, there's certain ways of doing this. You should never you should never cliffhang, or unless you know what you're doing, you should never cliffhang and then switch perspectives. People hate that. You only do that once you've gotten readers' trust. Um, and I there's another way of doing this, which is what I am going to do is you finish the story of one character first, and then you do a second book or second
Right.
series in the same world from a different perspective. I think that might also work.
And there's a really good author that I would say exemplifies this, Meridina, who does all of those bug worldview stories like Unmaker, recently Thousand Tongue Mage, that water skipper story, Stormstrider, I think it was called, where they're doing exactly what you described, where they have these different character stories telling different portions of that world's history throughout this bug invasion war thing. And I think you nailed it on the head there with that's one of the more, I would say, probably accepted by this reading audience ways to do multiple characters.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I mean, you said like, hey, I don't like Mistborn all that much, but
I'm gonna get so much flack for that, I'm sure.
oh no, it's fine, it's fine. Like people are entitled to their wrong opinions. Um,
Yeah, they're wrong opinions. Sure, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut so I don't dig a deeper grave.
yeah, no. Like some people have highness taste, and that is okay. So I'm
Yeah.
joking. Like you're allowed to not
No,
like things.
no. I'm just kidding. I love these little digs. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Um. God damn, I need to write my band. I have a character who just does nothing but that. So I think that he does it really well in Mistborn, where he has the epigraphs that are really good. I also, by the way, even though they kind of spoil everything, and they aren't as expertly done, I'm very, very sorry to say this, Bryce, but I'm very, very sorry, but like they're not as expertly done as like Mistborn's, which is to say as like, oh no, this 3-star Michelin course is not as good as like Alinia's. Oh no, right? So right. But in Warformed, he also like sometimes has like these like shifts, and they work if they really provide context to the upcoming story and help to like create tension, not by value of cliffhanger, but by setting up a potential danger that the main character isn't even aware of. That's when you can use them. In Mistborn, you can also use them by giving the reader more information than the main character has, which is like the same thing as I said before. It's a little bit twisted to make the reader understand things that the main character is puzzled about. So you can have that like puzzled or clueless main character and learn even more. But yeah, I personally think that like it's very hard. It's not easy, and if you're it's a tool like any other, and you got to be very careful of how you use it. But question number 2.
Shoot, I just dropped my pen. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was
I got another
dramatic,
pen.
like comedic timing, 100%. It was great.
Yeah. Sorry, didn't mean for that to happen. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now you have a dependency.
Oh my god. Boo. Bad fun. Okay.
People keep saying bad pun. That's an oxymoron. Like that doesn't exist. All puns are great. It's about the pain they inflict. What's the best advice you've ever gotten as a writer?
Oh, this one's easy for me. Write what you know, write what you love. And what I mean by that is you need to start out your writing journey by writing experiences that you know well, that you've lived, because that's going to be the easiest thing for you to get into and then start to kind of find your voice. And then over time, you transition into the write what you love. It's like, okay, what do I love to read? What do I love to consume media wise? And how can I start to kind of write stories in that? And I haven't mentioned this during the YouTube version of the interview yet, but I will here. I'm a high school teacher. I teach English, and I've taught English for 7 years. I'm going on to my 8th year now. And one of the first things I teach my freshmen during our creative writing section of the course is you need to know yourself before you can get to begin writing somebody else. And when you can write about yourself, then you can start imagining yourself in these scenarios of what you enjoy. So, like, one of my very first stories that I wrote was a shameless self insert, and it will never see the light of day. It's buried on an external hard drive that is in my spare tech box that's in the attic. It's never going to see the light of day. But it was a self insert into a fantasy world. Sort of like it wasn't really isekai because I didn't know what that was when I was doing this at the time. But I said, okay, I know myself well enough, I think. Let me try writing myself in a fantasy world. And then from there, I continued to say, okay, how can I add in new characters, develop different characters? But it all started with writing what I knew, which was my own life experiences. And then from there, incorporating what I loved, which was primarily fantasy. And then from that point, I've been able to develop, digest new viewpoints, obtain more learning on the subject. In the Patreon exclusive portion before this, we talked about lifelong learning and how that's kind of something to advocate for. And I'm all for that in whatever field of education or personal leisure or side hustle someone's in. Um, so I really valued the advice of other authors and reading their work and their unique shifting perspectives. But for any person who's seeking to start their journey, it's just that simple phrase: write what you know, write what you love.
Yeah. Nothing really to add to it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty straightforward. It's a nice little philosophy to have, and it is working with some of my students. There's a couple students I have from last year who have actually started posting their stories to Royal Road because they want
Nice.
to get used to the idea of, I have an audience, I'm writing a weekly web serial. It's something they can look at and say, I'm proud that I'm doing this, and
Mhm.
they'll also be able to see their development with it over
Oh yeah.
time, which is awesome because like there's a reason why I didn't throw out that hard drive, that flash drive
Mhm.
with that super old story that's never going to see the light of day except my own eyes, because
Yeah.
I think it's valuable to look back to where you came from and see what you've developed
Mhm.
and how you've changed as a writer. And that's that whole part of the process of, you've written what you know. How has your development of what you love influenced what you know?
And that's when you go back and then you rewrite, right? That's how you do
Uh,
that.
it depends if the story's salvageable. My first endeavor is not salvageable at all. There's no salvaging it.
I often think that people like mistake like rewriting for editing.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
or revising. Like some stories you don't revise, you rewrite. Period. Um,
Entirely, yes.
and like, so I I started. I revised a lot in the first version of Torchbearer, and I should have rewritten the entire thing. Like, yeah, it seems like a huge waste, but I need to do it. So I need to learn how to like plot. Sorry, I'm like really on the fast train today when it comes to talking. But when you were talking about write what you know and write what you love, I think it's important to also underline that what you know doesn't always mean self-insert stuff. It can mean
Right.
that, absolutely. But if you know a genre like super well, then go like, and you know all the tropes. I mean, like you can write like if you watch a lot of anime, you can write an anime script.
Right.
Just like look at Royal Road, look at some of the stories that are up there,
Hmm.
right? Look at some of the stories that like hit number one. These stories often are very, very, very tropey, I would say,
Hmm.
but that's not a bad thing. So, how should I put this? Like these stories follow a certain format, and most of them are very shonen anime. And you can write that. You don't need to have like perfect prose. You don't even have to have good formatting. I mean, we're talking about Iron Blooded, right?
Hmm.
Um, and Reese would be the first person to like. Reese actually said like, "Oh yeah, my editing is shit," right? So
Right.
literally just like one sentence per paragraph, just like rattling it down. And 5,000 followers. You don't need to
Right.
be a genius to write this stuff. Like you don't need to like try and be fancy and fail like me. But you can literally just go out and write something that you like. And
Right. And as
yeah.
long as you're having fun, then it's worth the experience. The
Mm,
the phrase that I mentioned, that write what you know, write what you love,
mm,
that's primarily what I use with, like, these are, high school students. They're still learning what they like, who they are. They're trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives, and I'm just trying to provide a little guidance. But when you are talking about somebody who is an adult, who's lived some life, who, like you said, has consumed media of their selected type, then yeah, they can absolutely go jump right into the deep end, I would say,
mm,
and just start writing what they love, because they
mm,
already know themselves well enough to be able
Mhm.
to characterize an individual.
Yeah, exactly. So, and when it comes to like tropes, because like this is something that people, I think, when they go into writing, they often think about it, or think about like, oh, I don't know what to write or how to write a good story or whatever. And that's not often not quite true. You do know how to write a good story. It's just it,
Getting the
you
words
just
down
can't.
on paper.
Yeah, we're getting words down. You can't get distracted. So Drew has this thing that I just blatantly am stealing, uh, and that is, you know how Tolkien was inspired by Norse mythology.
Oh, you are talking to someone who studied Tolkien exclusively for like a year and a half in college. So yes, I'm very familiar.
I can't go through his Beowulf stuff. Like I'm just like, oh my god, it's
I
like the
love his
worst part of the Lord.
translation. I love his translation of
His
Beowulf.
translation is great. His translation is absolutely great, but his essays are like
Oh,
the worst
yes.
parts of Lord of the Rings, but in
Oh god,
academic.
they're so dry.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's like they're so dry. Like they drank my tea when I put it next to them. Like it was so hard. Like I love you, Tolkien, but it's so hard to be a friend sometimes. Anyway, but he was inspired by Norse mythology,
Right.
or like Germanic mythology. And then the people who came in the 70s were inspired by Tolkien. And then the people who came in the 90s were inspired by those people, you know, like
Hmm.
Twilight, of Autumn, Dragons, whatever, like Chronicles of Twilight, Dragon, Autumn, whatever, you know, that sort of stuff. Like,
Right.
um,
All of those gamut of 70s, 80s fantasy
yeah,
authors that echoed Tolkien with
yeah,
elves, dwarves, magic, dragons, all that.
because that's what they consumed when they were kids, right?
Right.
They grew up on this stuff, like Tolkien, and then more Tolkien, I guess. And then, you know,
Hmm.
Brandon Sanderson, for example, or Max Gladstone, or Patrick Rothfuss, or even George R. Martin, they grew up on that's like on the 50s and 60s kind of fantasy,
Right.
right? Kids these days grew up on anime.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. No, it's
No, no, I don't do that in a bad way. I mean, like, I
mm-hmm.
get where you're coming from with that. That's
Mm-hmm.
the anime they consume is varied and
Yeah,
interesting, but you're absolutely right. You mentioned earlier it goes into shonen a lot, and I
yeah,
think that's one of the most prominent.
yeah. And I mean, we also have like a bunch of Otome stories on Royal Road, but anime and RPGs like
Right, they go
Final
hand in
Fantasy.
hand.
What?
They go hand in hand.
Yeah, like Final Fantasy 7, like Final Fantasy 6, 5, 6, 7. You know, those like all these, like some people probably were like in 10 or 11. Baldur's Gate, like the old ones. That's a kind of my generation, and
Hmm.
then generations of like these days, like I don't even know. They
Baldur's Gate
must have
3.
Baldur's Gate 3, yeah, like that sort of stuff. I mean, like one of my clients. Yeah, okay, well, like, yeah, he grew up with like a bunch of other stuff, but that's a different topic. But the of course they're going to write in the style of what they experienced, and part of the storytelling of an RPG is the growing stronger in like numerical values, this kind of like
Yes.
quantification of strength. And to explore that, how would a character feel if they knew how strong they are in numerical values, which some characters actually in RPGs do? For example, Final Fantasy X, which is not a great Final Fantasy, by the way, it's my
Mhm.
hot take. They know how many like sphere stones they have and how far they are on the sphere board. Like sometimes that they can like talk about it. Like they know because they talk about it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, writing that sort of story, that's new. It hasn't been done before because the art style, like the entire genre, the medium didn't exist until, let's be real,
Recently.
95.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from, and I think a great example of a story that does that, the classification of power levels where characters are talking about it. I recently finished up Horikoshi's last chapter of My Hero Academia. The manga, I read it. Um, and there's a part where the characters are just talking about the different hero society rankings. And it's the exact same concept. You have this lit RPG type feel where they're being ranked, but there's not any real spoilers on this because it's
Mm.
been out for a bit now. But the characters are not just ranked on like combat prowess, it's like how they are as a person, like as a
Yeah.
hero persona rather than just pure power level.
Yeah.
And there are some, like you said, there are some stories in the lit RPG space where you can see definitely that there is a deeper insight behind it and that the characters absolutely like question their own stats.
Yeah. And yeah, like in the RPG happens a lot, right? Like the question, like, am I getting stronger because the system says I'm getting strong? Like the strength increases my strength, or am I getting stronger and that is reflected in my stats? Like that's a question that often comes up.
Right.
I have one more hunch that I haven't been able to like verify because I haven't looked into it yet, and that is like I honestly believe that there was like a really big thing in like medieval and like early medieval Asian cultures was this like hierarchical ranking, right? So
from a
I
mythology
think,
standpoint, I'd say yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Was that real?
So I to preface this, I only remember what I know from my extensive research into Chinese mythohistory because, again, I like researching stuff, and Journey to the West was captivating for me. I did have to skip over some filler chapters. Thankfully, there's guides online for that, but like that captivated me, and then I started researching it. And in college, I took a philosophies of the East course and a religions of Asia course. From my understanding, absolutely in the medieval period, the equivalent of the medieval period, I think it's the Qin dynasty, there was definitely this idea that, at least when it came to the celestial organization, like the heaven and all that, it's like, okay, you got Buddha above everything, then you got the Jade Emperor, and then you got all these different Bodhisattvas, and you have all these different kind of like spiritual rankings of different individuals. So I think you're on point with that. I don't know if it lapses outside of the mytho history portion though.
I mean, like Europe had the Great Chain of Being, right?
Mhm.
Where it's like the demons at the very bottom, and then God at the top, and like it's also basically ranked by like character and or power level, with humans being in the middle, and then like humans were like there was like minerals, plants, animals, humans, and so on and so forth. Like basically like ranked by intelligence and or power and or whatever. And like then like comes like normal humans, then come like the lords, then king and the pope, and then God, and then angels and God, like so on and so forth, right? And then there was also like some sort of like ranking in there. So yeah, like the idea obviously isn't new. People like to know where they stand in society. But
Right. I think people have always sought classification in a variety of ways. There's a reason why people try to find like boxes to put themselves into with labels on them to try to identify who they are in relativity to everybody else around them. So there's definitely, I think, some definite validity to what you're saying, that it's kind of a universal human experience that we sort of compare ourselves against other people or other objects or other things that we interpolate as being within reach in some way, shape, or form.
I want to talk more about this, but we have to move on because we're
No,
reaching the end of our time. So question number 3. I'm bad at timekeeping. Like, if you ever ask yourself, like, hey, why does Maddox go off track in his books a lot? Now you got your answer.
They're fun tangents, but yeah.
They're fun, yeah. God, I want to make a tangerine pun, but I'm not going to. At that time.
Can a team of has-been teen idols save the world? Find out in the new series Boy Bands and Dragons. When Neverboyland is sucked into a magical world, their reunion takes a back seat to staying alive. But if they can get over the past drama that drove them apart, they may find that even pop stars can be heroes. Come and discover your new favorite read. Our comeback tour is Slaying Monsters, the first in the Boy Bands and Dragons series by Kim Smuga Otto, dropping on Kindle Unlimited October 25th.
Okay, so next question. What's one thing that you changed or learned while writing that you will now do differently in the next book, or that you have already changed or would go back to and change?
That's a great one. Honestly, the biggest thing that I've kind of taken away for this specific space, and I highlighted it a little bit, I touched on it earlier, the idea of sticking with a consistent singular main character point of view and not doing really swaps. So, like, Ruinous Return is a big cast, and that was stated at the start. Dark Matter Ascension is pretty main character centric, but there are side character scenes and a handful of tertiary character scenes kind of help flesh out the world. And I've already seen some flack on that from some commenters, some patrons who are like, once you get to book 2 and you've got like 4 different perspectives, then I just lost interest and stopped subscribing. So what I'm doing right now with Last Lord of the Fae, and this is sort of a test to see, okay, is this what the market is seeking? Because this is what it sounds like it's seeking. The entire story is told from Tristan's point of view. There is no dipping to side characters. It's completely third person, semi-omniscient, over the shoulder. And by semi-omniscient, I mean it, like directly sitting next to the character, that kind of third person Resident Evil style camera where you get glimpses into his mind, you see his thoughts, but it's all his point of view, and it's not switching at all. And thus far, patrons have received it well. I'm curious how a larger, wider audience will receive it, but I'm holding off on pushing it to Royal Road till I have 100,000 words done. And I just cracked 75K yesterday.
I often feel that maybe we are shaping our own audience. I mean, obviously we are, but that the big weakness of the serial format is that you can't really do character switches because it's annoying. Like, I want to know about this character and I have to wait 2 weeks until I read more about him. Like, oh no, right? But on Kindle,
it's very different.
Yeah, because you can either just skip, or you can get through it more quickly. You don't have to wait for the next chapter. I have some clients who are trying desperately to release chapters on Royal Road, and it's not working for them at all.
They're trying to build that pipeline of the web serial to get people over to Patreon instead of sticking with what their kind of guns are, which is let's push for that Kindle release.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So
just to use Ruinous Return as an example, right now that's my biggest story at just over 5,000 followers. I already am pretty damn sure it's going to do better on Amazon for the exact reason you said. It's not web serial friendly. After I've fully written the story now, and I've had like 10,000 word chapters, 5,000 word chapters, I'm like, okay, this type of story doesn't do well web serial format wise. It just doesn't fit it. It's like if you were to try to have a Tolkien Fellowship of the Ring told web serial wise, you would lose your audience in a heartbeat because there's too much build up chapters, there's too much prologue chapters.
You might want to look at stories that have been traditionally serialized, like Sherlock Holmes, for example.
Oh, I love Sherlock Holmes. I've got the whole entire master collection of Arthur Conan Doyle on my bookshelf downstairs.
I got it standing around here somewhere too. I think I sold it. It wasn't like
there's only so much bookshelf space.
I moved, yeah. I had a broken spine, so I'm like,
oh my god, condolences.
Yeah, like one of my friends was like, "Oh, cool." I'm like, no, god damn.
That's not fun.
But yeah, it was cool. But I have to. I mean, like, Sherlock Holmes is the stereotypical OP main character.
Yes,
right?
I think he's one of the archetypical characters that defines the kind of that web serial penny dreadful genre that we're sort of seeing a resurgence of in the modern era.
And I'm kind of wondering if, the Odyssey or whatever, if Homer just kind of like stood somewhere in an amphora and is it amphora? No, that's not the right word. Anyway, one of those like big gathering places, and told the story piecemeal, week after week, and he thought about new stuff, and then he wrote down what you like best. Right, that could be fun, but we'll see. Okay, we have to like move on to the next question. Unfortunately,
It's all good. It's all good. We can speed run these next few questions, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Too many philosophical tangents.
Which are nice. I like them. But
Yeah,
in
they're
this
good.
in this day and age with them TikToks, you can't.
Oh,
you only have
yes.
like 8 seconds of like attention span. Oh my god, and it was like really hard.
Oh, yeah.
Your teacher, you know all
that,
about that.
yeah, that hits hard.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
What's one book that you love, and why is it awesome?
Okay, so the book is called Krondor the Betrayal by Raymond E. Feist. Now, it's part of a larger series called the Riftwalker Saga. It starts out with Magician Apprentice and Magician Master, and then it has a bunch of different sagas built into it. And the Krondor the Betrayal story was one of those kind of like 70s, 80s fantasy books where it took inspiration from what Tolkien had done. Like you said earlier, these people read Tolkien, so they were writing what they loved. But it was the first time that I had ever read a fantasy book where it was a mix between characters in a city doing political intrigue, thieves guilds, and being the main characters of like Thieves Guild, which I hadn't seen before because they're always seen like, as the bad guys in that older fantasy. And also switching out to characters in exterior point of view outside the city doing traditional adventuring type stuff, and flipping back to the main characters from earlier entries in the saga, Malamber/Pug and Thomas, who were doing like this huge meta plot that overarcs everything else. So it was a cool intermix of different plot devices, and the book was so beloved that I read it till the pages fell out.
Nice.
Like the pages had fallen out. I'd taken it to the library 4 different times to get them to rebind it, and they said, "Oh, we can't do any more. This book's dead." And eventually I had to throw it away and buy a new copy. So I did. But definitely Krondor the Betrayal, which actually became both a D&D module for Advanced D&D 2nd edition and a video game called Krondor the Betrayal. Or no, The Betrayal at Krondor. They renamed it a little bit for the release. But it was good. I freaking loved it.
Yeah. Cool. I wish I could go more into this, but we can't.
I know. We spent too long earlier on philosophy, damn it.
That's something you will never hear me say. But shoutouts.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have a couple over here, so you're going to see my avatar go to the side. Okay, so first off, I mentioned the author earlier. I don't remember if it was in the pre-show or during this. Neon Dreams, the author of Second Summons, Riftwalker, and he was also working on another story that he then dropped. When I started Royal Road back in February of this year, and to preface, I've been writing for 16 years. So, and I've tried to get into trad fantasy, get my books published through trad fantasy. I've talked to agents. I've had agents consider my work. Even Stephanie Meyer's agent for Twilight, she was considering one of my pieces, which was awesome. But I tried releasing my first story on Royal Road that was very much that write what you love. It was isekai-inspired dark fantasy, grim dark, called Echo's Evolution, and it sucked. It was not received very well. I got around 300-something followers because my prose is good. My prose is excellent, not just good. But I reached out to Neon Dreams after reading Second Summons, and I was like, hey, I've got some questions. And he sort of took me on as under his wing as a pupil of sorts. And he gave me a lot of good advice for a rewrite, not a revision, a rewrite. And that ended up resulting in Rising Stars All Run that got me to, I think, slot 26. And it like the story went on to be self-published on Amazon, and it's actually brought in a decent chunk of change. So I'm super stoked to always advertise for Neon Dreams because he's a fantastic guy. He has been kind of AWOL recently, but he's in a good place. So he's just doing real life stuff. The second person is Luna Dia from Sill. We are buddies online. I do a lot of beta reading for them with one of their new stories they're working on in development. And I kind of view them as my rival of sorts, but I'm the lower of the two rivals. I'm the Vegeta to his Goku.
Underdog stories.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the Bakugo to his Deku. I know that he's like the milestone that I'm trying to set myself against. Like I want to get to his level of success on Royal Road on Patreon. I want to get to his level of where he's at, because I need that driving motivator of a rival to help push me to my best.
We had a quote wall. Like one of my friends' houses in college had a quote wall. One of the biggest quotes was, "I challenge you to a rivalry."
I like that. I'm gonna have to use that on him. The last big shout has to probably be to Sean Wilson, aka Dadman or Dad's Bedtime Stories, the author of Ultimate Level 1 and Battle Through the Nine Realms. When I got in, and yes, the Dawn of the Last Dragon Rider. Yes, sorry, I didn't see that up there until you pointed it out because I was too enthralled by that Brandon Sanderson setup. But he's given me a lot of great advice. If Neon Dreams was the person who got me in the door, Sean Wilson is the one who invited me into the house with open arms, and really has given me a lot of solid advice. I've been able to ping ideas off of him. He's been able to sit down and voice chat and answer questions. Very great guy. Awesome dude. I wish him nothing but the best and the best of success. Those are kind of the big three shouts. And then, of course, Kanadaj, Wing, Mod John, the guys running Royal Road, because without their website, I would not be signed with Mango Media for 2 different novels. I wouldn't have Patreon income. Like, this is something I never expected, and it's through the website that it's happened.
I'm going to tell them that. Meet them in a minute.
Oh yeah,
but I about like 7 minutes. I got a call with Wing about a couple of things.
Oh, fun.
Oh yeah.
Fun
big
stuff
things coming. But it's gonna be. I've had the pleasure of meeting Kana at DragonCon, and we kind of hit it off. We hung out like the entire Monday. It was awesome. Or like the entire Tuesday, because we flew back at the same time, and we just talked. Like you could talk with Tukana like for days. He's amazing.
Yeah, he seems like a cool guy
too.
From the interactions I've had on Discord. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, 100%. Like even better in person. Okay, but yeah, we're hitting the 2-hour mark, and we do need to cut it, unfortunately, because I do have to get to this other meeting.
I understand.
Yeah, that's okay. But yeah, I mean, like, I would love to talk more about, like space powers, because I was writing a story that I didn't know what to do with. It was called The Starlit Night.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, and it's a system apocalypse isekai where system apocalypse happens, and it's like, you've been drafted into the war. Congratulations! Wait, what? And then everyone gets like pulled into the war. It's mad fun. Main character is literally a psychopath.
Those are always fun to have main characters, just like the battle hungry psychopath or individual who just wants violence and chaos.
No. Like, one of my best friends, she's a clinical psychologist, and she works with psychopaths. And I wanted to write like a real psychopath. Mm-hmm. So it's not that they're like inherently evil. There's many psychopaths who are like well-functioning members of society, but they just don't feel emotions all that much, and they have to fake it.
That'd be interesting to write, because there's a sense like you can almost not identify with them as a reader if that's the main character. I'd be curious to see how you play it out.
They have one emotion. Rage.
Oh, yes. So you're making Doom
like-
guy.
Almost, yeah. Like, but like the imagery I had in my head doesn't work with the character, and the character doesn't like the character and the people work really well, but I have no idea about the system. So like that sort of stuff, I would have loved to talk about that more.
Well,
But
maybe
the idea is that the main character kind of was being held together by his like family ties. You know, that's often how the support structure goes. Like they kind of like get being told like you can't punch that guy. That doesn't work. He's like,
right.
why not?
It worked for all my other problems. Why can't it work here?
Well, it's not about that. It's like it's kind of like psychopathy has been positively selected over like thousands of generations because we need people. When we retreat, we need one person to stand back and fight until they die.
Right.
That's what we need them. And if they survive, we give them everything they want because holy fuck, they're terrifying.
Right.
Like that's how it works. Writing that is kind of fun because like it shows psychopathy as almost kind of like a protective role in a way, but obviously also like the downside of that. But that's way too heavy for Royal Road, like way too heavy for Royal Road.
Yeah, that's something where you'd have to cater it to a specific audience. But if you ever want to, not necessarily for the like this type of interview type podcast, but if you ever wanted to have me on just to talk systems, because that's one of my favorite things to do is design systems, test them out, and play around with like just talking it out. So that might be something fun to do for your audiences, just like have a dialogue about designing a system from the ground up using your inspiration. That might be a fun thing to do.
Well, shout outs to my episodes about making systems that I did with I think with John Beers and a couple of other people. Like I had a round table for like 2 hours.
I remember. I watched
Yeah.
a few of them when I was working on Dark Matter Ascension, and I'm like, okay, I kind of get what they're saying. I get this, and then I winged it and came up with my own shit. So.
Yeah, like, yeah. I think you would like talking to John. John's like really pleasant individual, great friend. Okay, but
we are at the 2 hour mark. Yeah,
we are at the 2 hour mark.
Sadly.
Yeah, and like there won't be any Patreon content after this, but there was before the show, so
a good amount too. We talked for
a
a
very good amount. Yeah. So
well,
again,
thank
if
you
you want,
so much. Oh, sorry,
if you guys want to like check out Patreon, there is at least 1 hour of bonus content for every hour of show that I have. It's in the link down below. Go check it out. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. And last plug, Dark Matter Ascension does daily chapters on Royal Road, 80 chapters ahead plus on Patreon. Read all of Ruinous Return books 1 and 2 right now on Royal Road. Book 3 starts in January.
Before they come out on Amazon next year.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, I hope to see you there, and thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, let's keep chatting. And for everyone out there, thank you everyone for listening and or watching, and I'll see you next time.
If this avatar
and
could
if you're
wave,
on
I would
Patreon,
wave.
yeah, we could wave. Like, and if you're on Patreon, the show unfortunately doesn't go on this time. Okay. Thanks for everyone for being here. Thanks for your support. And I hope the show was fun nevertheless.